Hello and welcome to Ruggles Roundup. It's the portion of our Elevated Mission podcast where we talk about all things sports. We're super excited to bring this episode to you. Well, the NFL Combine is just getting wrapped up, and we've got some huge winners and some huge losers coming out of the Combine. It's always interesting this time of year. You still got pro days ahead of you. You got some guys that chose not to participate in parts of the Combine. But who are the winners at the Combine over the last few days?
Okay, so we'll start off with those winners as we got D tackle Brandon Fisk or Fisk. I'm not sure how to say his last name.
Yeah,
Fisk out of Florida State. He played really, really well. He ran a fantastic 40 at a 4.78. At his size, that is fantastic. And then also you watched him work in the bags, and I love that they had the simulcam this year with the bags and all the different drills, and he was looking so smooth in those drills as well, cruising past some of the top prospects at that D tackle position, and definitely worked his way up some of those draft boards. As we talk about how I saw Joe Klatt talk about this as well, and I think we agree with this, that the Combine isn't really where it makes or breaks people draft status. It's really where you break ties, where you go, this D tackle class, I'm not sure who I want over this guy, who I want over that guy. I felt like this D tackle class was kind of meshed together. Nobody really knew who they wanted. And Braden Fisk definitely moved his way into one of those top D tackle category.
Yeah, I like this guy. He was a MAC school guy. He was at Western Michigan, then came in for this last year at Florida State, kind of a grinder, coming up, making that happen. Then he's down working with Coach Sophie Ruggles. A little shout out down in Bomberitos in Miami. She, of course, was showing him all her speed techniques, getting him right in that 40 and all those agility drills. And so, she got him right for the Combine, and then he went out and shined. That's, of course, my daughter, your sister, that did actually work with him in the pre-Combine. And so just a little extra. But he's been on everybody's winner board for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just played out of his mind. Definitely made his name known. As I hadn't really thought anything about him as a D tackle, didn't really hear much about him, and then everybody was talking about him after the Combine. But now moving on to a super deep class. I mean, every wide receiver felt like they were doing good at the Combine, but this guy was a guy that just confirmed some of those really impressive moving statistics, and that's got to be Mitchell out of Texas. He is a freakazoid when you talk about size, and then running a 4.34 40 time at his size. It is a dynamic matchup there.
Just blazing fast. Yeah, nice height, good length. I mean, there was a couple Mitchells that shined. I think we're talking about another one here in a second. But yeah, it was basically if Mitchell was your last name, you're going to do pretty good here at this Combine. But yeah, he looked like the real deal out there. And Texas wide receivers did some nice things in general, out there as well. So we'll talk about all this stuff. But yeah, the length and the speed, you gotta be impressed with what that young man did at the Combine.
Yeah, I mean, 6'4" at that size, running a 4.3 is ridiculous. And so I think he found himself. He moved his way up definitely a few draft boards as he's in that tie of who's the fourth best receiver in this draft? Is it Keon Coleman? Is it Adonai Mitchell? Is it one of these other guys? And I think he might have moved himself into that fourth place spot with that Combine performance.
Yeah, I think you might be right. And then we got another Mitchell coming out of Toledo, up there at the Glass Bowl, getting it done at the cornerback position. Another Mitchell.
Yeah, Quinyon Mitchell was a guy that I really liked out of Toledo. He's one of my top cornerback prospects. I think that there was in my opinion, it was a tie between him and Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama. Those two guys, I thought you could go either way with it, and he really proved himself to have all the physical tools that you want out of that cornerback spot. As he ran a 4.33 out of the 40-yard dash, and we'll talk about Kool-Aid McKinstry's performance in just a little bit, as he made it in our other group. But Quinyon Mitchell, definitely a winner from this draft.
Exactly. He's pretty tall for a DB, of course. He ran that sub 4.4, in that 4.3 speed, and so that is a beautiful combination when you get to DB, where a lot of times you got shorter athletes that maybe can get jumped over top of to get jump balls, those kind of things, where he might actually be able to get up there and battle a little bit because he's got that length as well.
Absolutely, definitely a very, very good performance from him. And then our last exact player that I think we have on our winner list is Dallas Turner. I mean, freak edge rusher. I think there was a few debates on who was going to be the first edge rusher off the board, and I really felt like Dallas Turner solidified himself, running that 4.46 40-yard dash time, sitting at 6'4", and weighing at 251 pounds. I think was heavier than what people expected, and then also at running that ridiculous time, I think just solidified himself as that number one edge off the board, and may have even gotten himself into the top 10 picks.
Yeah, he had a crazy vertical too. Do you have his vertical there in front of you?
Yeah, I can pull up his vertical in 2 seconds.
I think he had a really nice vertical as well, which just goes to his explosiveness.
40 and a half.
Wow.
40 and a half vertical.
That's a big man jumping 40 and a half inches. I mean, super explosive player. Yeah, I would not shy away from drafting this guy. He's an Alabama product. You like that from the defensive side of things, and then he puts in a performance like that. Look for him to go early. That's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And then our last little winners was teams that need an offensive tackle. You had Joe Alt, Fuaga, Mims, Guten, Fashanu, as well as Futanu, all scored in the 94th percentile or better in Platt's relative athletic score. And so very impressive athletes at that tackle position. We'd always talk about it whenever we talk about offensive linemen. You want those dancing bears. And these guys definitely proved at the combine that they have the athleticism and the size to be those dancing bears.
Yeah, I was watching some of that drill work, and they seem to have a move in more dynamic, athletic ways than I've even seen in years past. As I was watching some of the drill work they were putting these guys through, and man, these guys are the definition of dancing bears, good athletes. I mean, these are guys that it feels like if they just trim down, they could play wide receiver. They just needed to trim up a little bit, but no, we're going to see some great young offensive linemen hitting the league, and it's going to be exciting to see as they get rolling here in the NFL.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely some really impressive performances from those tackles. And I'm sure a lot of teams are super excited about that, as I think you can kind of go pretty deep into this draft and find yourself a guy who may be a franchise tackle for you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Now let's move on to a little bit less exciting topic, the losers of the combine, as these guys not necessarily ruined their draft stock or did anything too horrible. And some of these guys, I even say they were the losers because they were in a position group that did so well in the combine. And so we'll start off with Audric Esteem out of Notre Dame. I think that's how you say his name. He ran just a really poor 40 time, which I'm not one to get too caught up on the 40 time, especially for running backs, but a 4.71 is not what you want to see out of your franchise back.
No, that's a tough 40 time score. Now, what I'd like to see is what the scouts got on his 10 and his 20-yard time. usually more relevant for a running back than the 40-yard time, but that is a super slow 40. His top end speed obviously is not super great, even if he does have a good 10 or 20 yard time. And so, that's going to hurt.
Yeah, wasn't a great 10-yard time either. He
Oh,
definitely was not moving. It was a 1.58, which was in the there was only one guy who ran a slower 10-yard time in that one as
yeah,
well.
that's gotta hurt. Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be hard to recover. Now, what he does out there playing, football on the field, once he gets into camp with somebody, that's still left to be seen. Some guys are just not, you know, the underwear Olympics just doesn't play into some guys' game for sure. But we'll see. That's hard to make up for in the NFL game where everybody's fast, everybody's athletic, everybody can play football at the highest of levels, and so yeah. We'll see. I hope for the young man that he gets a shot and he does well with it.
Absolutely. Moving on to the DB cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama. He lost the 40-yard dash battle between him and Quinyon Mitchell in my eyes. I thought both of them were tied, like I said, and I think Kool-Aid had to run in the 4.4s to keep that thing a tie, and then he ran, I think it was a high 4.4, it was a 4.5 40-yard dash time was what he ended up running, and so just not what you wanted to see out of him, who was really looking to be a top DB pick and just wasn't able to show out that speed.
Yeah, probably it moves him down the draft board a little bit. You never know; that might land him on a better football team. So, long term, maybe not a death nail for sure. But yeah, you if you want to get that top draft pick money, then you want to run a little faster 40 time as a DB than that. And in comparison to him and Mitchell, Mitchell in the 4.3s, that's just a big difference when you're looking at those 40 times.
Yeah, and then we'll move quickly over to edge rusher Austin Booker out of Kansas. With so many good edge rushers doing really nice stuff in the combine, he kind of fell into the wayside as I expected more from him, as he's kind of one of those sleepers in the draft. He ran a 4.79 in his 40-yard dash, not as explosive as you want to see. The vert was only at a 32-inch vertical, which I mean is not horrible, but it's just not showing off that explosion that you're hoping to see out of that edge defender category, and so definitely drop down on a few people's draft boards.
Yeah, that edge, that's a freakazoid land is where those edge guys are. And so you got to put up freaky numbers at the combine to be a top draft pick. That's for sure. And you got a deep class. So
Absolutely. And I think that kind of goes in right with the next player that we're talking about, a deep class in the wide receiver position. And Keon Coleman is a guy that definitely dropped himself down a few pegs in that wide receiver position, running a 4.61. I do not think that's a, death nail on his draft stock, as even while he was running in the gauntlet of the catching gauntlet, he showed that he ran at one of the top miles per hour in those gauntlets. So he's confident running at full speed while catching the football. I think you can see that on tape that he's just very confident in his hands. And so I don't think he drops down too many draft boards, but just not the 40-yard dash time to say this guy's going to be able to separate in coverage like we want him to at the NFL level.
yeah, and already with that concern already being there, before this 40 time, I think, yeah, like you said, it's going to drop him a little bit. Somebody's still going to pick this young man up. He's got a lot of talent.
Oh yeah, and then also you just got to kind of talk about those wide receivers, as then you had Brian Thomas Jr., the LSU wide receiver that was in some of our top spots, running a 4.33. We already talked about Adonai Mitchell running a 4.34, 4.36 by Devontae Walker out of North Carolina. A lot of those top guys ran really top-notch 40-yard dash times, which I think hurt Keon Coleman's draft status for sure.
Well, Dunze was already ahead of him in the draft pick. He ran like a 4.4 something, I believe, as well. So just
Yeah,
a really
he
nice.
played. He just proved what he can do. He's got the size. He's got the speed. Dunze ended up running a 4.45 was what he ended up doing.
Yeah, that's plenty fast for all his skills and his length and everything. Yeah, it's nice. He put a nice day. And then I know you put down as another loser is John Ross. His combine was a few years ago, but it was what he was really hanging his hat on, right?
Yeah, that was. I mean, he lost his claim to fame. It was the 40-yard dash record that everybody played once a year. He was guaranteed an Instagram post by ESPN, and that's gone now. As one of the winners of this year's draft was obviously Xavier Worthy, running that 4.21. I mean, we thought he was speedy coming out of college, but he proved that he is more than just speedy. He is going to be he is one of the top speedsters in the NFL the day he walks on. I mean, you're talking about track speed now when you're running that 4.21.
Yeah, Texas wide receivers didn't realize. I knew they were fast. I knew they were good. You talk about fast, man. They had some speed out there.
Whoever's the strength and conditioning coach over there, I'm looking at him to try and get him at one of my programs. As that guy's can develop some players, man.
And sorry, John Ross, we're gonna miss you come combine time next year.
Absolutely. But it was definitely a fun combine. I thought there was a lot of players just because of how deep these classes were. A lot of different players competing for top spots. We watched them really show out, see some really freak athletes, and definitely some ties were broken and some really eyes were opened, I mean, about some of these players.
Well, thank you for watching and listening to Ruggles Roundup on the Elevated Mission podcast. Make sure if you're on YouTube, you click the subscribe and you click the like button. We love that you're out there listening and watching us talk about all things sports. We'll see you next time.